Maxi and the perpetuals were created to combat the gas issue on Ethereum, but there's kind of like secondary and tertiary benefits to this pooled stake token market, so to speak. So if I go back to the homepage table right here, you can kind of see the areas in green and red are the premium and discount to what's called the mint and the stake backing value. And you can kind of pick up T-shares for a discount to what they're actually worth, so to speak. So if I quickly go over to delta discounts, you can kind of visualize this on a chart. But if we look at eMaxi, it's kind of got the nicest chart here. You can see that the line in red going all the way from a 1-to-1 mint. So one Maxi is worth one hex. It very quickly went to a premium where one Maxi was actually worth 2 hex for a period. And that was like worth way more than its actual underlying value, which is this yellow line. This is the value of the stake creeping up every single day, accruing yield. And then you can kind of see after a while, it's actually dipping below its backing value in kind of like this sine wave. And so this is really cool because this is actually the price behavior that Goldkey, one of the founders, kind of predicted, like that the market price would oscillate around or thereabouts the actual stake backing value. And so if you're able to buy below kind of the stake backing value, you're kind of in effect getting cheaper, a cheaper hex stake than you would otherwise be able to get. And that's why, yeah, that's also an opportunity for smaller guys to get cheap hex stakes.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Maximus like, now solving problems out there.
Actually, can you, okay, so you're saying below the yellow line means that you're effectively, you could say, just as a numeric example, you could say, hey, I'm going to, for the price of 1 hex, I'm actually going to buy 3 hex, for example.
I did that. When PulseChain launched, 1 Deci was worth 0.5 hex, right? And I can show you this on the chart.
Wow, Deci still looks under. Wow. Deci
is like the most undervalued hex ecosystem asset, in my opinion, right? So P-Deci especially, it's been 40%, 50% at a discount to even its mint. So when PulseChain launched, I was buying Deci at a rate of 1 hex to 0.5 Deci, which if you look at where PulseChain launched, it actually should have been around about 1.2. That's how much 1 Deci is worth, 1.2 hex at that point in time. So I was, buying a lot of Deci at this point without really even knowing all of these stats. I just knew that, hey, wait, and this was the first time I got into these products. I faded Maxi in the beginning when it minted and launched. I didn't get in until PulseChain launched. And I saw that 1 Deci was worth 0.5 hex. And I was like, wait a second, didn't people mint this thing for 1-to-1, 1 hex for 1 Deci? Why is it worth 0.5? And so I was like buying a ton then, just eyeballing it, thinking it was like undervalued. And then that's what led to this whole website of like detailing all of the stats around it and actually like confirming my investment thesis to a T. Like, yes, it's been undervalued. And if you bought that 50% discount to mint, the discount has closed very, very gradually over the past few months. But actually, we just crossed the 1-to-1 mint again, for the first time on P-Deci. But for the first time since the mint on Ethereum, it's hit a 1-to-1. And if you bought the 40% discount to mint here, because it's less than a year, it's the snapback in percentage terms back to mint is 67% up move, 7% up. And because it's less than a year, if you normalize that to a whole year, it's actually 100% APY.
So I'm confused about a point here. So if it's under the yellow line in this visual representation, it's at a discount, or is it more nuanced than that?
It's more nuanced because there's actually a discount. There's 2 discounts. there's a discount to the yellow line, which is kind of referred to as the NAV, or the backing value, the stake backing value, which is the principal of the HEX stake. So 1 HEX plus whatever yield it has accrued. And then there's also the discount to the mint, which is also like very important. Because DeSi and Maxi are so long, they're 15 years and 10 years, Lucky is 7 years, because they're longer, the arbitrage is kind of drawn out. Like, you have to wait the entire time. You have to wait the full 10 years until you can fully realize that arbitrage. And because of that, buying it exactly at the backing value isn't exactly its fair value, in my opinion, right? This is all like my opinion, but because when you buy it exactly at its fair value, you're buying the T shares at the full market rate, and you're just locking up HEX that's doing nothing. So you're locking up HEX for 10 years potentially, and it's not accruing yield whatsoever. And there should be some discount attributed to that fact, because you're not experiencing a gain on that HEX, but it's locked. And so the fair value actually, in my opinion, sits somewhere between this yellow line and the horizontal line that goes at 1 HEX. So this horizontal line where my cursor is right now, it's somewhere between those two lines is kind of where the fair value would lie. And you can see that DeSi, the reason that kind of came up on my radar, is just way below the mint in the first place. So yeah, it was kind of a bit more obvious than, say, Maxi, where it's like it's basically tracking its fair value. I think like buyers and sellers of the Maxi stake pool are both getting a fair deal. Like, people who sell it, they're like realizing their APY that they've earned, and then buyers, they're able to jump on to the max, like the last 14 or 13 years of the HEX stake, and still experience like a 35% APY. So yeah.
I think when the products first came out, I still remember the mint day. I was like 1 for 1 Maxi. And I remember Dipcatcher saying, because I was at first I didn't know much about it, and I was like, oh, why would I trade HEX for this? And I always remember him saying something like, maybe it'll be worth more in the future, because I really didn't understand like what this thing was supposed to do. And then I think a lot of people are just kind of not doing it because it's another contract risk. I know what HEX is. I know all this stuff. Give it some time. We're a year or 2 years in now. I could imagine in the next few years, a lot more people just taking advantage of this stuff. I don't know how long the discounts are going to last, because legit way to like you said, undervalued pieces of the ecosystem.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Maybe I can just close out on one final point.
Sure.
So yeah, like Max said, like the progress of the HEX stakes, like you can kind of see Maxi's 12% of the way through, DeSi's 14, P Lucky's 20%. Base, the 1 year one, it's already like a third of the way through. So because you're buying HEX stakes like partially complete, that's why you kind of need all these statistics to like really value them and compare them to one another. But the best metric to use, KG, if you want just like one metric, like to know, like, is this over or undervalued? It takes into account kind of the fair value, is the APY in dollars today if you buy. And that takes into account how much money you're putting in, how much kind of projected HEX you'll get at the end. And this is the adjusted APY in dollar terms. And you can see it takes into account the discount that exists on DeSi right now. And instead of a 31% that you're getting in HEX terms, which is how much the HEX is increasing based on the initial mint, you're actually going to be getting a 35%. And that takes into account the fact that you have shorter to wait to redeem, and that the discount exists because the market price just happens to be lower than it kind of should be. And so you just need to look at this APY and dollar value today. And then we have that on both chains. And you can kind of see PDESI, there's an opportunity there if you're into longer stakes. P Lucky as well. It's pretty much at its APY and HEX. And then P Trio as well, there's an opportunity. And then the final interesting thing is you can compare these tokens to one another, but you can also compare them to solo staking, because you know, that's also important. Like what alternatives do I have if I don't buy these tokens? Okay, I'm doing a native solo stake. Well, we have the APY for starting a new solo stake from today, and you can see that because these tokens have captured their historic stakes. Basically, they started a year and a half ago. They captured a lower T-share rate, and so the T-share rate has gone up quite considerably since these stakes started. You're actually not able to get even the underlying HEX APY of that stake anymore if you start a new solo stake today. So you're actually comparing 18% versus 25%, 23% versus 35%. And then Maxi happens to be kind of bang on what you would get for solo staking a max length stake. So
Wow.
yeah, I'll close out on that point. But
dude, fantastic work here. Really appreciate you putting this together. I mean, this is gold information.